Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive.
Great to be back.
In our previous session, which was the third episode of our Qualitative Research Unplugged series, we really dug into the nuances of focus group discussions. We covered, how to design them, how to facilitate them effectively, and capture that really rich interactive data.
Yeah, that was a good one. Focus groups are powerful.
Absolutely. So today, it feels like the logical next step. We've got all this incredible, rich, qualitative data, maybe from those focus groups or interviews or documents. How do we actually make sense of it all?
Right. The analysis challenge.
Exactly. We're diving into one of the most fundamental, yet I think incredibly powerful analytical approaches out there. And it's absolutely crucial for your research journey, especially if you're, wrestling with vast amounts of text.
Indeed. And this deep dive, it's really tailor-made for you, the doctoral students in the business school at the University of Ghana, especially as you master Advanced Qualitative Research Methods. We're drawing today's insights directly from a comprehensive and incredibly practical guide. It's called A Doctoral Student's Guide to Thematic Analysis, and it's authored by Professor Richard Boateng and Dr. Jonathan Barnor, both esteemed faculty right there at the University of Ghana Business School.
That's fantastic. So real experts guiding us.
Absolutely. And it's actually a crucial chapter from Prof. Boateng's forthcoming Research Made Easy 5th edition. So you're getting a bit of a sneak peek at some really cutting-edge guidance here.
Excellent. So our mission today is to truly unpack thematic analysis, often just called TA, right?
Right, TA.
It's a method that at its heart helps you systematically identify, analyze, and then report patterned meanings within your qualitative data.
Systematically is the key word there.
Yeah, think of it not just as finding information, but really as unearthing the hidden stories, the underlying structures, the resonant echoes in your interviews, observations, documents, whatever data you have. It's about moving from just raw text to profound, defensible insights.
Well put, from words to meaning.
So if you're ready to transform that mountain of words into a compelling, evidence-based argument for your research, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Okay, so to kick us off, let's just quickly set the stage for qualitative research in general, because thematic analysis sits squarely within this whole approach, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It's a core qualitative method.
At its core, qualitative research is all about diving deep, right?
Yeah.
Understanding phenomena from the perspective of those actually experiencing it.
Exactly. The insider view.
And embracing this idea that there isn't just one single objective reality out there. Instead, it acknowledges multiple realities, often socially constructed ones.
Which is fundamental. Reality isn't monolithic.
Yeah, it's a commitment to capturing the richness of human viewpoints within their natural context. It makes it an incredibly powerful tool, I think, for uncovering nuanced understandings that, quantitative methods, just by their nature, might completely miss. It's about answering those how and why questions.
Precisely. And within this vibrant landscape of all these different qualitative approaches, thematic analysis, or TA, has really emerged as a foundational and, frankly, one of the most widely used methods.
You see it everywhere.
You really do. It's so widespread, in fact, that it often faced a bit of an identity crisis in the past. As a guide points out, Braun and Clarke famously referred to it back in 2006 as a poorly branded method.
Huh. Why poorly branded?
Well, because it was frequently used extensively in research, but often without explicit recognition. Or sometimes it was confused with other approaches like content analysis. You have many researchers who were doing TA, but without truly knowing they were doing it by name, or perhaps without following its rigorous principles systematically.
Ah, okay, so it was happening implicitly.
Exactly. But in recent decades, thanks to much clearer articulation and really robust methodological development, people like Braun and Clarke have been instrumental here. TA has firmly established itself as a distinct and incredibly robust method in its own right.
Good. It deserves its own recognition.
It does. And for you, as doctoral students embarking on advanced qualitative methods at UGBS, this is particularly significant. Mastering TA doesn't just equip you for one specific type of analysis. It provides you with these core analytical skills that are highly transferable to many, many other forms of qualitative analysis you'll encounter throughout your academic and professional careers. Yeah. It really is a fundamental building block.
That makes so much sense that it provides those transferable skills. Okay, so let's get right to the heart of it then. What exactly is a theme in this context? When I first encountered the term, it sounded simple, almost intuitive, like, okay, it's just a topic you discuss in an interview. But I suspect, based on what you're saying, it's far more nuanced than just a surface level topic or a mere summary of what someone said. What's the real intellectual leap we need to make here?
That's a fantastic question, and it really gets to the core of what makes TA analytically powerful, not just descriptive. You're right, it's definitely not just a topic. That's where Braun and Clarke's definition becomes absolutely key, and it's something you should really internalize. They define a theme as something that captures something important about the data in relation to the research question and represents some level of patterned response or meaning within the data set.
Okay, important. Patterned response or meaning. Let's break that down.
Let's do that. Let's break down the essential characteristics of what makes a strong theme, because this is where the analytical rigor really comes in. First, a theme is a pattern. It reflects a patterned meaning, an idea, an experience, an attitude that recurs in a significant way across your entire data set. Now, and this is a really common misconception, don't confuse this with mere frequency.
So it's not just about how many times something is mentioned.
Exactly not. While a concept might appear many times, its importance isn't solely determined by counting how often it shows up in your transcripts. A critical, insightful observation, maybe a profound reflection, or even a unique perspective from just one participant can be profoundly significant if it offers a unique, novel, or critical insight into an underlying dynamic that directly addresses your research question. It's about meaning and salience, not just counting occurrences. You're looking for recurring ideas, experiences, or attitudes.
Okay, pattern of meaning, not just frequency. Got it. What else?
Second, a theme is focused. It acts as an organizational principle. It gathers and condenses a set of related ideas, experiences, or statements into a coherent, distinct, and manageable concept. Think of it almost like a conceptual container.
Okay, like a bucket for related ideas.
Sort of, yeah. It brings together these disparate pieces of data that, on their own, might seem disconnected, but together they form a unified narrative or insight. It allows you, the researcher, to present complex information in a really organized way, making it much easier for your reader to follow your argument and understand the story you're telling.
Makes sense. It provides structure.
It does. And third, and perhaps most importantly, as you alluded to earlier, a theme is analytical. This is where you absolutely must move beyond simple description. A strong theme offers an interpretation of the data's meaning and significance. It has to answer that crucial "so what" question in relation to your research.
The so what test. I like that.
It's critical. It's not just stating what was said. It's about delving into what it means, why it matters, and what the underlying implications are. This is the interpretive leap, the real value add of your research. You're building an argument based on the patterns you found.
That analytical point is so critical. I can really imagine it's a common trap to just describe, to simply report what people said rather than really digging into why they said it or what it signifies at a deeper level. How do you really make that jump from this is what they told me to, okay, this is what it means?
That's precisely where the skill and the rigor come in.
Fair.
And it takes practice. Let's ground this with an example, which the guide uses beautifully. Imagine a marketing firm conducting focus groups about a new, eco-friendly product line.
Okay.
A simple descriptive topic derived from the discussion might just be packaging. People talked about the box, the material, so that's a topic. That's just summarizing a category of discussion.
Right, very surface level.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But an analytical theme could be something much deeper, like aspirational sustainability versus practical guilt.
Ooh, okay. That sounds more interpretive.
It is. This theme goes much deeper. It captures the patterned way consumers express a clear desire to be eco-conscious. Wanting to do good for the environment, wanting to buy green products, but then simultaneously articulate this sense of guilt or frustration when convenient, less sustainable options are just easier for them to choose or maybe cheaper.
I see that tension.
Right. This theme is deeply interpretive. It reveals a core tension, a kind of psychological conflict within consumers that maybe wasn't explicitly stated like, I feel conflicted, but it's inferred from their collective expressions, their hesitations, the trade-offs they describe. It shows a core dynamic, not just what was explicitly said about a product's box. And for you, the doctoral students in the business school of the University of Ghana, this guide we're discussing provides a really detailed step-by-step walkthrough precisely to equip you with the knowledge and the confidence to make this interpretive leap and to apply this flexible and powerful method to your own rigorous research.
That's a great example. Okay, so given its incredible flexibility and that emphasis on moving beyond mere description, When exactly is thematic analysis the ideal choice for your research? Especially thinking about those of you undertaking advanced qualitative research methods at the University of Ghana Business School. It seems like it could apply almost anywhere, but where does it really shine? Where do you get the most sort of bang for your buck with TA?
That's a great way to put it, bang for your buck. TA is indeed remarkably adaptable, which is definitely part of its strength, and it makes it a go-to method for many qualitative researchers. But you're right, it's particularly well suited for several key scenarios where other methods might be, let's say, overkill or perhaps less efficient.
Okay.
First, it's excellent for exploratory research. This is when you are delving into a phenomenon or maybe a research question about which very little is known, or perhaps where existing theories don't quite seem to capture the nuances of what you're observing in the real world.
So when you're mapping new territory.
Precisely. You approach the data without a strong reliance on preconceived theories or hypotheses, allowing the themes to essentially emerge directly from what you read and hear. This inductive approach often leads you to surprising new insights you might not have anticipated at all, genuinely expanding knowledge in a field. It's like, as you said, going into uncharted territory and mapping what you find, rather than just confirming a pre-existing map.
I like that. What else?
Second, TA is perfect when your primary goal is understanding experiences and perspectives. If your research questions are really designed to explore people's in-depth views, their personal lived experiences, maybe deeply held beliefs, or specific behaviors related to a particular phenomenon, TA provides the robust framework to really uncover those nuances.
So getting inside people's heads.
In a way, yes. Whether it's understanding how employees perceive a new organizational policy, or maybe how customers experience a service interaction, TA helps you truly see the world through your participants' eyes, capturing the richness of their subjective realities. Third, it's invaluable for summarizing large data sets. Qualitative research, especially, large-scale interview projects or extensive focus groups, can generate a substantial volume of raw data. We're talking dozens of lengthy interview transcripts, maybe hundreds of pages of field notes, or extensive open-ended survey responses.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming.
It really can. Manually sifting through all that can feel incredibly daunting. TA offers a structured, systematic way to make sense of this wealth of information, identifying recurring patterns and core meanings without getting completely lost in the weeds. It helps you distill vast amounts of information, allowing you to see the forest, not just the individual trees, if you like.
A structured way to manage the volume. Makes sense.
And finally, its relative accessibility compared to some other, perhaps more philosophically dense qualitative methodologies makes it very suitable for research with lay participants.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, this is particularly relevant for, say, participatory research designs, where community members or non-academics might be actively involved in the analysis process itself. The steps of TA are generally intuitive enough that they can be learned and applied collaboratively, fostering a more inclusive and democratic research environment. It sort of democratizes the analytical process, making it less opaque.
That accessibility point is really important. And to give you a concrete example, let's consider a human resources scenario. Imagine an HR department wants to deeply understand the reasons behind a persistently high employee turnover rate in its tech division. They decide to conduct a series of detailed exit interviews.
A classic scenario for qualitative inquiry.
Exactly. Thematic analysis is the perfect method to analyze these interview transcripts. It allows them to systematically identify common patterns and, crucially, the underlying reasons for departure. For instance, they might find a recurring pattern, a theme, emerging around a perceived lack of career progression pathways. This wouldn't just be one person saying it, but maybe many employees expressing similar frustrations about stagnant roles, describing how they feel they've hit a ceiling.
Right, a pattern of blocked ambition.
Precisely. Or perhaps another theme emerges, a disconnect with management's vision. This might come up when multiple individuals hint at a misalignment between what leadership says the goals are and their own daily reality, leading to feelings of being adrift or undervalued. TA goes beyond those surface-level complaints, "My boss was difficult," to uncover deeper, potentially systemic insights that can then inform strategic organizational changes. It turns those individual gripes into actionable organizational knowledge.
That's a perfect illustration of its practical power.
Now, what's really interesting and something researchers need to grapple with is that even within this flexible method, thematic analysis isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. As the researcher, and this is critical for you, the doctoral students in the business school of the University of Ghana, you need to be crystal clear about the specific choices you're making as you conduct your analysis. TA exists on several crucial continuums, and your choices here fundamentally shape your analysis and ultimately its interpretation. I imagine it's easy to accidentally mix and match without thinking, and that could really derail your findings, couldn't it?
You've hit on a crucial point. Making these choices explicitly, consciously, and being able to articulate why you made them is paramount for rigorous application and for defending your methodological approach later on, say in your Viva. Let's break down these critical distinctions because they truly define the kind of insights you'll ultimately extract from your data.
Okay, let's get into these continuums.
First, we have the fundamental distinction between inductive versus deductive approaches. This really speaks to how much prior theory guides your analysis from the outset.
Right, theory-driven or data-driven.
Exactly. Inductive, often referred to as bottom-up, is a fundamentally data-driven approach. Here, you develop your codes and themes by fully immersing yourself in the data first, allowing insights to emerge directly from what you read and hear, rather than trying to fit the data into a pre-existing theoretical framework you already have in mind. The themes literally emerge organically from the raw data.
So you let the data speak first.
You do. This is very common and incredibly powerful in exploratory research, particularly when you're exploring a new phenomenon or maybe there isn't much existing theory to guide you. The potential risk, of course, is that without any theoretical lens, you might miss some deeper connections if you're not particularly vigilant or reflective. But the reward is genuine discovery, finding things you didn't expect.
So for instance, if a researcher is studying user reviews of a brand new fintech app, they might use an inductive approach, right? They wouldn't necessarily start with established academic theories of user experience. Instead, they would just openly code the data, reading through hundreds, maybe thousands of user comments, and perhaps discovering completely unexpected themes, like maybe security anxiety, based on recurring concerns about data protection practices they hadn't even considered.
Exactly.
Or perhaps gamification rewards, as users frequently mention earning points or bonuses in ways the developers hadn't anticipated, or even something like community comparison as users discuss how their app usage stacks up against their friends. These themes aren't forced. They organically arise from the user's own words and experiences, offering genuinely fresh insights.
That's a perfect example of inductive TA. Conversely, the deductive approach, often called top-down, is theory-driven. Here you begin with a pre-existing theory, maybe a specific concept, or a set of questions derived directly from existing literature. You then systematically search the data specifically for themes and instances related to those established ideas.
So you're looking for something specific based on theory.
You are. It's incredibly useful for testing, elaborating on, or perhaps applying an existing theoretical framework to new empirical data. The strength here is that it allows you to build directly on existing scholarship, making very clear contributions to theory development or refinement. The risk, however, is the flip side of the inductive approach. You might inadvertently overlook novel or unexpected insights if you're too focused on finding only what you expect based on the theory. You might filter out things that don't fit your framework.
Okay, so in the field of accounting, for example, a researcher might want to investigate if the theory of institutional isomorphism, which, suggests organizations become similar by mimicking each other due to various pressures, explains why different accounting firms in a region are adopting strikingly similar sustainability reporting practices.
A very relevant topic.
Right, so they would analyze interviews with senior partners, specifically looking for evidence of the 3 types of isomorphic pressures described in that theory. Coercive pressures, like from government regulations, mimetic pressures, copying successful peers to reduce uncertainty, and normative pressures, from professional standards or education. They are actively searching for data that fits those predefined theoretical categories, using the theory as their analytical lens.
Precisely. A deductive approach in action. Okay, the next key distinction is between semantic versus latent themes. This continuum refers to the depth of your interpretation. How far below the surface are you digging?
Surface versus depth. Okay.
At the semantic explicit level, your analysis focuses squarely on the surface meaning of the data. You identify themes based on exactly what participants have explicitly said or written. The analysis primarily describes and summarizes the obvious, manifest content. This approach is often more descriptive, laying out the explicit patterns clearly stated by participants.
So a semantic theme derived from, say, customer feedback about a new service might simply be, participants report dissatisfaction with customer service response times. It's a direct summary of a stated problem. They said it, you report it.
Exactly. Very direct. Now, going deeper, The latent interpretive level of analysis transcends that surface meaning. Here, you identify underlying ideas, assumptions, ideologies, or implications that shape or underpin the explicit content. It's a much more interpretive and conceptual process. It often reveals what's implied, unspoken, or perhaps taken for granted within the data.
Reading between the lines, essentially.
Very much so. It requires you to infer meanings that participants might not have consciously articulated, but which seem clearly present based on their discourse, their experiences, their tone, or the context. This often involves connecting individual statements to broader cultural, psychological, or social context to understand the deeper significance.
Okay, so relating back to that customer dissatisfaction example, participants report dissatisfaction with customer service response times. A latent theme could perhaps be something like a breakdown of trust in corporate promises.
Ooh, interesting. Explain that.
Well, while participants might explicitly complain about the slow response times, the analyst, reading deeper, might infer that these delays aren't just seen as an inconvenience. They might be perceived by customers as a symptom of a deeper issue. Perhaps a company not valuing its customers enough, or maybe failing to deliver on its stated commitments about service quality, which then erodes their overall trust in the brand.
Ah, I see. The slow response is a symbol of something bigger.
Exactly. This isn't something explicitly stated by everyone, maybe, but it's inferred from their tone, the level of frustration expressed, maybe the accumulation of other small complaints, and broader comments about the company's integrity or reliability. It captures an underlying emotional or attitudinal dimension that's far more powerful analytically than just reporting slow service.
A brilliant illustration of the latent level. Finally, we consider your epistemological stance. Essentialist versus constructionist. Now, this gets a bit more philosophical, but it's crucial as it relates to your fundamental beliefs about the nature of reality and knowledge itself, and it profoundly impacts how you interpret your data and what you claim your themes represent.
Okay, this sounds important, but maybe a bit abstract. Let's clarify.
Let's try. An essentialist approach, sometimes called a realist approach, basically assumes that language directly reflects and captures an objective reality that is experienced by individuals. If you take this stance, your thematic analysis aims to understand and report the truth of those experiences as they perceive and articulate them. An essentialist TA would aim to report, for example, the real challenges faced by entrepreneurs, believing that their words give you direct access to those objective challenges that exist out there. It seeks to uncover truths that exist independently of your interpretation as a researcher.
So language is a window onto reality.
In simple terms, yes. In contrast, a constructionist perspective assumes that reality is not objective in that way, but is actively shaped, negotiated, and created through language and social interaction, through discourse. This approach focuses on how language and discourse construct versions of reality, knowledge, and identities.
So language creates reality rather than just reflecting it.
In a sense, yes. So a constructionist TA wouldn't just identify the real challenges entrepreneurs face. Instead, it would analyze how entrepreneurs talk about their challenges and what societal narratives, cultural scripts, or broader discourses they draw upon to make sense of and construct their experiences. It asks, how are these experiences being framed and constructed through their specific use of language? How do their words create their reality of being an entrepreneur facing challenges? It's a much more critical and reflexive approach, looking at the function of language.
Wow, okay, that's a fundamental difference in perspective.
It really is. Now, for most doctoral students like yourselves, especially when you're starting out with TA, beginning with an inductive semantic approach is often the most straightforward and manageable way to begin. It provides a really solid foundation for understanding the explicit content of your data first.
Okay, start simple.
Generally, yes. However, a truly powerful and nuanced analysis often benefits from combining approaches thoughtfully. You might start inductively, allowing themes to emerge freely, but then perhaps use a deductive lens later to explore an emerging concept in more detail if it happens to align with an existing theory you know. Or you might identify both semantic, explicit, and latent interpretive aspects within the same theme, showing different layers of meaning.
So it's not strictly either.
Not always. The absolute key, always, is to be consistent within your chosen approach for a given analysis and, crucially, to be transparent in your methodological choices. You absolutely must explicitly state which approaches you're taking in your methodology section, inductive or deductive, semantic or latent, essentialist or constructionist, and justify your decisions, because these choices directly influence your interpretations and the nature of the conclusions you can draw. Transparency is paramount.
That makes perfect sense. It's like having different lenses for a microscope. You can switch them out depending on what you're trying to see, but you absolutely have to tell your audience which lens you're using at any given time.
Precisely. Well put.
Okay. So,
Thank you very much. We are still on it. I'm intercepting because I wanted to establish some clarification on what I'm actually teaching you. Um, Most often the students just write down doing thematic analysis, and they are not very sure of which of them they are doing. But I'm kind of emphasizing that what the literature says is that we should be more specific about which of the dimensions we are doing. Now, if you just say that you are picking Braun and Clarke and you are using it, what are you using it for? From what philosophical stance are you coming from? Now, you are even seeing that if you are a realist, you are going to be more about telling the truth or people's experiences. But if you are an interpretivist, you are looking at how people construct that particular type of phenomenon within their minds and how they talk about it and how what it means to them, and then that discourse may create versions of reality that you may need to report on. So if you are not very sure of the dimension of thematic analysis that you are using, you just tend to be flat. And the other problem we have is that we have also got people who are evaluating who don't even know the differences. So sometimes somebody may be asking a question, but he's pushing you from one type of thematic analysis to the other. So that's why we are trying to say, to be safe, you may have to have a powerful approach where you combine both in one particular dimension. For example, if you look at the strand of inductive and deductive, you may want to combine both, because if you get now yourself deductively to your theory or your presumptions before you went into the field, then you actually close yourself from other type of things that the data may be suggesting to you, which may not be helpful. So you may want to open your eyes to see that there may be new thing the data is telling you. And that opening up is also very good. So that combined approach may be important for you. But if you also say that you are a realist interpretive, you should also understand that it puts you in a particular position on how you see what you're trying to do and what you're using the thematic analysis to do. And I think that is missing in our discussions quite a lot. And even in how we see, even in academic papers, people just write, I use thematic analysis to do this, and then we just might put Barnor and Clarke in the reference, and they just leave it like that. But I think we need to understand where we are philosophically in the work we are doing, especially being PhD students. I wish, to tell you, to reflecting on, I wish even in the fourth year, we could have actually been teaching, or the third year, we could be teaching qualitative analysis again. Because this is a time that the student is sitting with his data and he's actually confused on which approach I should go. By that time, you are not having much lectures and you are supposed to be a maestro of your own, having passed your comprehensive. But this is a point that I think that you need that guidance. And sometimes your supervisor is not a maestro in that area, or very expecting that he leaves you to look for your own way and pathway in this one. But hopefully, maybe this material that I've developed and the subsequent related materials that will come with it and the video we are having may be a rich experience for you at that time. Okay, so we are moving to then now that I know my stance, what do I do with the data? How do I get the data ready for the whole experience? Yes, I'll take two or three questions here. Well, gracefully, we are joined by some doctors to be who are about to just graduate and those who are in their final years. So thank you very much, Patrick and co. Thank you. And Dr. Obed, thank you very much for joining us. I see Sylvester too here from the UK. Thank you very much. Okay, so Richard, yeah. For those of you who are joining us
Yes,
every week, 11:30, we are doing proper qualitative. This is not the old one that you went through. It's the television and the past 4 weeks has been very, very phenomenal. Last week we were doing focus group discussion. We couldn't even leave the class. Okay, let's continue. Yeah, Richard.
yes, Prof. Thank you very much. So far so good. So in the methodology session, do we have to state, for example, the type of thematic analysis, or which of the subsets we are combining? Maybe this analysis or thematic analysis uses both inductive and then there may be latent aspects to discuss the theme. How do we put the nuances of the thematic analysis that we are using in the methodological session?
Okay, in your right tab, we are going to have a session called data analysis in your methodology, and you are supposed to explain how you did analysis. Most of you just write that I did thematic analysis, but you have to tell what did you do? What steps did you take? Which approach are you using? So the approach, first of all, in terms of philosophical understanding, were you doing inductive or deductive, or you're combining both? And then were you raising it a little bit to be able to, in case the topic is about exploring certain types of like let's say that what does it mean to be a polling agent? That's why you're looking at real issues that are happening here. So you can either go a essentialist or a constructionist. What does being a polling station mean to you? What is the real experiences of being a polling agent? Then you're going essentially. So I always say that sometimes the nature of your question also gives you direction where you are going. So even though you are doing deductive or inductive, you need to start the position that you are in. Because look at what the realist is going to report the truth of the experience. That means that anytime a person tells you that being a polling agent is not easy. You have to be political, and you have to know how to evade, and you have to have some macho boys around you, have some people who can defend you and protect you. Somebody knows you have to be spiritual. All these things are things that you are just saying, but what does it really mean? I hope you understand. You have to go beyond the word and say spiritual. What does it mean? So can you explain what it means that we being spiritual? Don't interpret it for the person. Let the person tell you what it means. So that you can actually look at it and even ask him, does it even work? Yeah. And then when you go to another person, you listen to the person, then you may even realize that discussion about being spiritual is just coming from a particular locality. If you're in Accra, maybe you have to have arm tax with you. Otherwise, your ballot boss will go away. So you have to look at different issues. Some people in a quiet place where there's only one, it's a school. There's nobody around. There only few people in the town. They know each other. You go and you see that even the MPP and the NDC, the opposing parties, are sitting together eating kinky. This one, there's no point. You realize that this is just your expressing our view. We all even know what we are voting for. I hope you understand. So it's a very friendly environment and it changes the dynamic. So the context shapes what is happening there. This is some of the things that you will unearth for us if you're a realist. But if you're a constructionist too, it may have different impact on what you're going to do. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so if I don't see any other hand up, let's continue. Unless I'm mistaken. Yeah, good. So next thing is that how do you prepare your data? So that's what we are going to delve into. Thank you. Thank you for joining us for a deep dive or over to my discussions.
Before you even begin the exciting work of coding, which I know is what everyone really thinks of when they hear thematic analysis, you're saying rigor actually starts much earlier with incredibly meticulous data preparation. This isn't just some technical prerequisite, it's a foundational step that profoundly impacts the quality and depth of your subsequent analysis. I've definitely seen students, and honestly even myself sometimes, try to rush this step, thinking it's just, administrative work. What are the absolute non-negotiables here?
You've hit on a very common temptation, and one that can seriously compromise your entire study if you succumb to it. Rushing data preparation is truly akin to trying to build a house on a shaky foundation. It just won't hold up. There are two absolutely critical steps here, and rushing either of them will compromise your entire study. No shortcuts.
Okay, lay them out for us.
The first is high-quality transcription. Your qualitative data, whether it comes from interviews, focus groups, or even maybe detailed observational notes, needs to be in textual form for systematic analysis. So if you've got audio or video recordings, they must be accurately transcribed. And for thematic analysis, a verbatim transcript is generally ideal.
Verbatim meaning?
Meaning you include every single word, every hesitation like, false starts, stutters, repetitions, and even important nonverbal cues like laughter, sighs, or significant pauses if you can note them. These nuances are not just noise. They can themselves be incredibly valuable data points. They can indicate emotion, uncertainty, cognitive processing, emphasis, things that would be entirely lost in a sort of cleaned-up transcript.
So don't try to make the participants sound smarter or more articulate.
Absolutely not. Not at the transcription stage for analysis. Crucially, do not clean up grammar, remove those ums and ahs, or attempt to make the speech sound more grammatically perfect during transcription for analysis. Those elements can reveal cognitive processing, emotional states, or conversational patterns that are essential to capture for your interpretation later. Cleaning them up before analysis means you're already filtering or potentially biasing your data, losing vital context before you even begin to properly interpret. Think of it as leaving no stone unturned in preparing your raw material. Keep it raw.
Okay, verbatim transcription. Got it. What's the second critical step?
The second, and arguably the most critical and often the most underestimated step, is data immersion, sometimes called familiarization. This isn't a quick skim. It's a deep, multi-layered engagement that sets the stage for all subsequent analytical thinking. You simply must become intimately familiar with your data before you start breaking it down.
Intimately familiar. What does that involve practically?
It involves several things. First, reading and rereading the transcripts multiple times. The first read might just give you a general sense, like a quick tour of a new city. But subsequent reads are where you start noticing the side streets, the local customs, the hidden gems, patterns, surprising statements, connections between different parts of the interview will begin to emerge only after repeated exposure. You're actively looking for what stands out, what's confusing, what contradicts something else, and what generally seems important or resonant.
So multiple readings are key.
Absolutely essential. Second, if possible, listening to the audio recordings while reading the transcripts. This is vital if you have recordings. Text alone can be incredibly flat. It misses so much information. Listening allows you to recapture the tone of voice, the emotional inflection, the emphasis placed on certain words, and even the pauses or silences that text alone can easily miss or misrepresent. A participant saying yes with a heavy sigh means something entirely different from a cheerful yes. This adds a crucial layer of context and emotional depth to the raw words, significantly enriching your understanding. It really helps you get into the participant's headspace.
That makes a lot of sense. Text loses tone.
Completely. And finally, making initial notes and jotting down your thoughts and early impressions. This isn't formal coding yet, let's be clear. But it's the crucial beginning of your analytical thinking. As you read and listen, you'll naturally have thoughts, questions, ideas popping into your head about what's significant. Jot them down maybe in the margins of the transcript, in a separate research journal or document, or directly as memos in your qualitative data analysis software if you're using one. These initial jottings are like memos to yourself, capturing your immediate reactions and nascent ideas about potential patterns or particularly interesting points. This process helps you get a real feel for the breadth and depth of the material, moving you from being merely a transcriber or a passive reader to an active, engaged analyst from day one. It's like having an ongoing conversation with your data.
Okay, so you've got your data meticulously prepped, verbatim transcripts. You're deeply familiar with every nuance of it. You've read it, you've listened to it, maybe you feel like you've lived with it for a bit. Now we start to talk about the actual building blocks of thematic analysis. Codes. What exactly are codes, and how do they relate to those broader themes we discussed earlier? It seems fundamental to understand this hierarchy. I imagine it's easy to confuse them, especially at first.
You're right. The distinction is absolutely crucial, and it's often where students, and even experienced researchers sometimes, first get tripped up. Thinking about the relationship helps. Think of it like building something, maybe like constructing a mosaic, as the guide sometimes suggests. The concepts stack upon each other, each representing a different level of abstraction and serving a different analytical purpose.
Okay, a mosaic. I like visual analogies.
Good. So a code is your smallest unit of analysis. It's like the individual tile in your mosaic. It's essentially a label, typically a word or short, concise phrase, that captures a single interesting feature or aspect of the data that is directly relevant to your research question. It's the granular tag you apply to specific segments of your text. A sentence, part of a sentence, maybe a few sentences. It stays very close to the data itself.
So like a tag for a specific idea.
Exactly. For example, if a participant says something like, I work from home, but I honestly feel like I'm always on call, a relevant code might simply be always on, or maybe lack of switch off. It's specific to that statement.
Okay. Then what's coding?
Coding is the active process itself. It's the act of identifying these interesting or relevant features within your data and systematically labeling them, applying those codes, throughout your entire data set. You're actively breaking down the text, often line by line or segment by segment, and assigning these conceptual tags consistently wherever they appear. It's the action of identifying and placing those individual tiles onto your base.
Okay, code is the label. Coding is the process of applying the labels. So where do themes come in?
A theme, then, is a broader, more encompassing pattern of meaning that groups several related codes together. If codes are the individual tiles, themes are the distinct images or sections you create, by arranging those tiles, maybe the face in the mosaic, the landscape section, the abstract pattern. Themes give structure, meaning, and a cohesive narrative to your findings. They represent a patterned response or meaning that recurs across the dataset in relation to your research question, drawing together multiple related codes into a richer, more interpretive concept. They move beyond just description towards analysis and interpretation.
That mosaic analogy works really well. The codes are the tiny pieces, the themes are the meaningful pictures they make when you group them together. Let's maybe take that finance example, I think it was mentioned in your guide, to really make this concrete. So an interview study about retail investor behavior during periods of extreme market volatility, like a sudden market crash.
Oh yeah, stressful time for investors.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So as you analyze the interview transcripts, you might identify individual specific codes from what participants say. For instance, you might see someone describing refreshing their investment app every few minutes, so you code that checking portfolio constantly.
Right, a specific action.
Or maybe another participant talks about constantly reading news articles about the crash, so that's a distinct code. Reading news about the crash. Other codes could be panic selling, when individuals describe hastily offloading assets, perhaps against advice, or seeking reassurance from online forums as they turn to peer groups for comfort or validation, or even ignoring expert advice if they mention overriding their financial advisor's recommendations. These are all discrete actions or feelings captured by codes.
Got it. Lots of specific little observations.
Yeah. Exactly. But then this is where the magic happens, right? Later, these distinct granular codes, checking portfolio constantly, panic selling, seeking reassurance from online forums, ignoring expert advice, could all be clustered together. They all seem to point to a similar underlying process. They could form a much more powerful and analytical theme, perhaps called something like emotion-driven decision-making in a crisis.
Ah, yes. That's interpretive.
Right. This theme shows how those specific individual observations or actions build into a larger interpretive conceptual understanding. It suggests how raw emotion, maybe fear or greed, seems to override rationality in investment decisions during these highly stressful times. It moves from what they did, the codes, to why they might have done it, and what it signifies about human behavior under pressure, the theme. That's the analytic leap we were talking about.
Exactly. That captures it perfectly. That's the difference between merely summarizing your data with a list of codes and truly analyzing it to find deeper meaning through themes.
Okay, that clarifies the code-theme relationship beautifully. Now for the core practical steps. The Braun and Clarke six-phase approach is, as you mentioned, widely cited and probably the most respected framework for actually doing thematic analysis. It provides a clear, systematic, step-by-step process that really helps demystify what can sometimes feel like an overwhelming amount of qualitative data. So for you, the doctoral students in the Business School of the University of Ghana undertaking Advanced Qualitative Research Methods, this is truly your foundational roadmap for rigorous analysis. Let's walk through it, and maybe we can use that powerful, consistent illustration from the guy of the interview with Maria, the 45-year-old accountant who transitioned to fully remote work for the first time during the pandemic. Let's say our research question for this illustration is, what are the experiences of mid-career professionals transitioning to fully remote work for the first time due to the COVID-19 pandemic?
Absolutely. Having a concrete guiding example like Maria's experience makes these abstract steps much, much clearer. Okay, let's dive into the 6 phases. Phase 1, familiarizing yourself with your data. As we discussed earlier, this is the deep immersion stage. It's foundational. Before you even think about assigning labels or codes, you must read everything, every transcript, every piece of data multiple times. The goal here is to gain a comprehensive, holistic overview of the content. You're trying to absorb the entire narrative, the emotional tone, the general patterns, the contradictions, the nuances, without yet formalizing them into codes. It's really about building an intuitive feel for the data first.
So resist the urge to code immediately, just read and absorb.
Exactly. Illustration, Maria. With Maria's transcript, you'd begin by simply reading it through several times, maybe with a cup of coffee, just absorbing her story. As you do this, you'd start to make those initial informal notes we talked about, perhaps in the margins of the transcript or in a separate memo document. You might note the initial positives she described, like no commute and flexibility for doing personal tasks during the day. But almost immediately, you'd also start observing the emerging negatives she mentions. The blurred boundaries between work and home, the loss of informal communication with colleagues, a distinct sense of isolation, and a palpable career anxiety about visibility. You're getting a deep, intuitive feel for the real roller coaster she describes, identifying the key shifts and the emotional landscape she conveys throughout her experience. This isn't formal coding yet. It's intellectual absorption, letting Maria's narrative truly sink in before you start dissecting it.
Okay. Deep immersion first. Then what's phase 2?
Phase 2, generating initial codes. All right, now the systematic, granular analysis truly begins. You transition from absorption to the active dissection of your data, breaking it down into smaller, meaningful chunks and labeling them.
This is where the tagging starts.
Precisely. You work through your entire data set systematically, segment by segment. This often means going through one full interview transcript at a time, line by line, or maybe paragraph by paragraph.
Okay.
As you read carefully, you identify interesting or relevant segments of text phrases, sentences, maybe short paragraphs that seems significant in relation to your research question. Each time you find one, you assign a concise code, remember, a word or short phrase that accurately captures the essence of that specific segment.
And you mentioned being inclusive here.
Yes, a crucial piece of advice here. Be inclusive. If something seems even potentially relevant to your research question, code it. Don't censor yourself at this early stage. It's always easier to discard codes later if they don't ultimately fit into a larger pattern than it is to realize halfway through your analysis that you missed something important and have to go back and reread the entire data set from scratch looking for it. That's a major time sink and incredibly frustrating.
Good tip. Code generously at first.
Definitely. And you can do this manually, using different colored highlighters and making notes in the margins, which some people still prefer. Or more efficiently, especially with larger data sets, you can use qualitative data analysis software, often called QDAS, like NVivo, ATLS.TI, or Deduce. These programs allow you to digitally highlight and tag segments of text with your codes and easily retrieve all instances of a code later.
Okay, let's apply this to Maria. What codes might emerge?
Right. Illustration, Maria. Let's apply this directly to Maria's exact words. For her, quote, suddenly I got 2 hours of my day back from commuting, you might code that segment simply as reclaiming time. When she says, it was great, I could throw in a load of laundry between meetings. A potential code could be flexibility with home tasks.
Okay. Specific benefits.
Yes. Then you get at the challenges. That powerful statement, the boundaries between work and home just evaporated, would almost certainly lead to the code blurred boundaries. Her comment, I'd find myself answering emails at 9 p.m. because a laptop was just sitting there, could be coded as working longer hours, or maybe difficulty switching off.
Right.
Phrases like, the team connection also suffered, or you really missed that informal interaction by the water cooler, clearly suggest codes reflecting loss of connection and missing informal interaction. When she states everything has to be a scheduled Teams call now, you could code that formalized communication, which contrasts nicely with you lose all that spontaneous brainstorming and collaboration, which might be coded loss of spontaneity.
Seeing the contrast is useful too.
Very useful. Her direct declaration, I feel more isolated, definitely, directly translates to a code-like sense of isolation. And finally, those anxieties she expresses around, you hope your hard work is seen. At home, you worry you're just a name on a screen, that your contributions might be overlooked when it comes to promotions. Clearly lead to codes like visibility concerns, fear of being overlooked, and career anxiety. This granular systematic labeling, where each relevant snippet gets a specific tag, is the foundational work. You'll likely end up with a very long list, maybe even hundreds of codes at this point, depending on your dataset size, and that's perfectly normal and expected. Don't panic.
Hundreds of codes. Okay, don't panic. What's phase 3 then? How do you manage hundreds of codes?
That's exactly what phase 3 is about. Phase 3, searching for themes. This is where you elevate your analysis significantly. You move from that extensive, often very long and potentially messy list of initial codes to a smaller, more manageable, and analytically powerful set of potential themes. This is the stage where you begin to see the larger patterns, the bigger picture, emerging from your hundreds of individual bricks or tiles.
Okay, starting to build the walls of the house or the pictures in the mosaic.
Exactly. You begin by reviewing all your codes and, importantly, the collated data extracts associated with each code. You're no longer just labeling. You're actively looking for patterns of similarity, overlap, and intrinsic relationships between different codes. The core question you're asking yourself is, how can these individual codes be logically grouped together into broader, meaningful, and coherent categories or potential themes?
So, looking for connections between the codes?
Precisely. And remember, this is an active interpretive process. You're not just passively sorting codes into predefined boxes. You're actively constructing potential themes based on your interpretation of the patterns you're seeing in the data. You're making sense of the coded data and beginning to build the analytical narrative of your findings.
It sounds like visualization might help here.
Absolutely. Visual tools are incredibly helpful at this stage. You might use mind maps on paper or software to visually explore connections between codes. You could create tables in a document to organize your codes and tentatively group them under potential theme headings. Or some people really like using physical sticky notes on a large whiteboard or wall, writing each code on a note and then physically clustering and rearranging them to visualize relationships. This helps you to create a preliminary thematic map, a visual sketch of the potential themes and how they might relate to each other. It's like sketching the blueprint of your findings.
Okay, let's see how this works for Maria's codes.
Illustration. Building on Maria's numerous codes we generated, you'd start clustering them. For example, the codes blurred boundaries and working longer hours and difficulty switching off clearly belong together, don't they? They seem to form a potential boundary issues cluster.
Yeah, they fit naturally.
Right. Then codes like loss of connection, missing informal interaction, formalized communication, loss of spontaneity, and sense of isolation all seem to point towards issues with how people relate and communicate at work remotely. They might form a potential communication and connection challenges cluster.
Okay, another clear grouping.
Then, visibility concerns, fear of being overlooked, and career anxiety naturally coalesce into a potential career and performance anxiety cluster. And you wouldn't forget those initial positive codes like reclaiming time and flexibility with home tasks, which might form an initial benefits cluster. From these conceptual clusters, you'd start to propose initial candidate themes, perhaps name something like the double-edged sword of flexibility, capturing benefits and boundary issues, the erosion of spontaneous collaboration, focusing on communication changes, and anxieties of invisibility for the career fears. These are your first attempt at themes. Candidate themes. I like that phrasing. They aren't final yet. Not at all. Which brings us to phase 4, reviewing potential themes. Your initial themes are still just candidates at this stage. They now need rigorous testing and refinement. This phase is critical for ensuring the coherence, the internal consistency, and the accuracy of your themes, making sure they truly reflect the nuances of the data. It's often the most iterative part of the entire process, requiring you to go back and forth between your themes, your codes, and your raw data.
So testing the themes against the evidence. How does that work?
This phase actually has 2 crucial levels of review. Level 1, review at the level of the coded data. For each potential theme you've drafted, you must go back and read all the data extracts, all those quotes and segments that you have collated under it. The critical question here is, do these extracts truly form a coherent, internally consistent pattern that genuinely speaks to the essence of the theme you've proposed? Is there anything in there that doesn't quite fit or seems out of place or contradicts the main idea?
What if things don't fit?
Good question. If some extracts don't seem to fit snugly, you must decide. Should they be moved to a different, more appropriate theme? Are they maybe strong enough on their own, along with other similar extracts, to form a new, separate theme you hadn't considered? Or should they perhaps be discarded altogether if they don't contribute meaningfully to any coherent pattern relevant to your research question? This is where you might need to redraw the boundaries of your theme, making it more precise and focused. It's about ensuring each theme is a tight, well-defined conceptual package.
Okay, review within each theme first. Then what's level 2?
Level 2, review at the level of the entire dataset. Now, you step back and take a broader view. Consider your entire set of refined themes, your thematic map, in relation to the whole dataset. Does your overarching thematic map accurately reflect the meanings evident in the data as a whole? Have you captured the main story, the dominant narratives? Crucially, are you missing anything significant? Are there large sections of your data, important ideas that aren't adequately represented by your current themes? And most importantly, does your thematic map, as it stands, effectively and comprehensively answer your core research question?
So checking if the overall picture makes sense and answers the question.
Exactly. At this stage, you might find you need to collapse themes that turn out to be too similar or redundant upon closer inspection. You might need to split a very broad theme into 2 or more smaller, more focused themes if it covers too much ground and lacks specificity. Or you might even have to discard a potential theme entirely if, on review, you realize it's just not well supported by sufficient data across the dataset. This is an iterative process of constant refinement, comparing your map back to the territory of the data, ensuring your themes tell the most compelling and accurate story possible.
Okay, let's refine Maria's themes.
Illustration. Maria. Right. After the initial grouping in phase 3, you'd begin refining, using these two levels. For Maria's data, you might look at that double-edged sword of flexibility candidate theme. Reviewing the extracts, you confirm it strongly captures both the initial benefits she felt, reclaiming time, home tasks, and the later boundary issues that emerged, working longer, difficulty switching off. It speaks to a single, complex concept that encapsulates a central tension in her experience. So you'd keep it, ensuring all collated extracts align perfectly with this tension.
Okay, that one seems solid.
Now, for the communication codes, you might look at your initial cluster communication and connection challenges and think, that's a bit descriptive, not very analytical. You need to push the interpretation further. So you might refine it to be more interpretive, perhaps calling it the transactional workplace, losing the human connection. This name highlights the shift from organic, spontaneous social office interactions to a mode of communication that became scheduled, formal, and strictly task-focused. And importantly, it points to the consequence of the impact on human connection and her feelings of isolation. That's more analytical.
Yeah, that's much stronger, much more interpretive.
Then the career and performance anxiety cluster. Again, you could sharpen this. Maybe refine it to anxieties of invisibility, the fear of being forgotten. This name is more evocative and reflects the deeper emotional and professional implications. She described the fear linked specifically to not being physically seen and potentially overlooked. After these refinements, you'd ideally reread Maria's full transcript one last time, with these refined themes firmly in mind to ensure they truly capture the essence and complexity of her entire experience and resonate with the broader insights from the data.
That refinement process sounds absolutely crucial for getting sharp analytical themes. Okay, what's phase 5?
Phase 5, defining and naming themes. All right, you've reviewed, refined, and you're confident in your set of themes. This is the crucial stage where you finalize them and prepare them for inclusion in your report or thesis. It's about bringing absolute clarity and precision to your analytical constructs, making them intelligible and impactful for your readers.
Getting them ready for presentation.
Exactly. 2 key tasks here. First, you define the theme. For each final theme, you need to write a detailed analytical definition. This isn't just a sentence, it's a short paragraph that explains what is the essence of this theme? What specific story does this theme tell about your data? What is its scope? What aspects of the data does it cover and what does it not cover? And how does it relate to, or perhaps distinguish itself from, the other themes you've developed? This definition is your interpretation of the pattern you've identified, clearly stating what it means in the context of your research and why it's important. It should succinctly capture the analytical meaning and how the data contributes to that meaning.
So a clear write-up of each theme's meaning.
Yes. And second, you name the theme. The name you choose is really important. It should be concise, yet evocative, and it should immediately convey what the theme is about to the reader. It should ideally capture the analytical heart of the theme, making it memorable and easy to grasp. As the guide suggests, using a particularly powerful or illustrative participant's quote within the name itself can be very impactful.
Oh, using a quote in the theme name.
Yes, it can be very effective. It grounds the abstract theme directly in the lived experience of your participants, adding a layer of authenticity and memorability. For example, instead of just managing identity, a theme name using a quote might be, "I'm not hiding, but I'm not shouting," managing identity in the workplace. It's instantly more engaging and specific.
That's a great tip. Okay, let's define and name Maria's themes properly.
Illustration, Maria. The guide provides excellent examples here. It contrasts weak names with strong ones. So instead of a weak descriptive name like employee feelings, a better, more analytical name reflecting Maria's experience might be navigating career uncertainty. And as we just discussed, an excellent name using a quote could be something related to visibility. For Maria's data, the guide clearly outlines specific definitions for the 3 themes we refined. Theme 1, the double-edged sword of flexibility. The definition would explain. This theme captures the initial euphoria Maria and potential other participants felt with remote work, gaining personal time, autonomy, and freedom from commuting, which, however, gradually gave way to the negative reality of blurred work-life boundaries, increased work hours, and an always-on culture, ultimately leading to burnout or stress. It perfectly encapsulates the inherent contradiction. What starts as a significant benefit can easily become a substantial burden without careful management.
Okay, clear definition capturing the contradiction.
Theme 2, the transactional workplace, losing the human connection. Definition. This theme describes the profound shift participants like Maria experienced from the organic, spontaneous, and often social interactions typical of an office environment to a mode of communication in remote work that became predominantly scheduled, formal, and strictly task-focused. This shift, the definition would elaborate, ultimately led to feelings of isolation, a perceived loss of team cohesion, and a diminished sense of belonging, fundamentally transforming the social fabric of work.
Captures that shift and its impact. Good.
Theme 3. Anxieties of invisibility. The fear of being forgotten. Definition. This theme focuses squarely on the significant career-related anxieties that arose from remote work, particularly for established professionals like Maria. Specifically, it highlights the pervasive fear that lack of physical presence in the office would lead to their contributions being overlooked, their efforts unacknowledged by management, and consequently, their opportunities for advancement, mentorship, or key projects being missed. It points to a potential disconnect between remote work and traditional markers of professional value and progression. These definitions are concise, analytical, and clearly differentiate each theme, setting them up perfectly for discussion in your findings chapter. Excellent. They feel complete now. So the final phase. Phase 6, producing the report. This is your final write-up, the culmination of your entire analytical journey. And it's crucial to remember, unlike maybe in some quantitative research traditions where writing is seen as a final separate stage after the real work is done, in qualitative research, writing is absolutely an integral part of the analysis itself.
How so? Writing is analysis.
In many ways, yes. It's often through the act of writing, articulating your themes, selecting the right quotes, structuring your argument that you actually clarify your own thoughts, deepen your interpretations, and solidify the connections between your ideas. The writing process forces you to refine your thinking. Your report, particularly your findings section or chapter, should tell a compelling, coherent, and evidence-based story about your data. It should logically present your themes, support them richly with participant voices, those data extracts, and weave them into an overall narrative that directly addresses your research question. It's not just a collection of themes dumped on a page. It's a carefully constructed analytical narrative.
Okay, the writing itself helps shape the final analysis. That's a key insight. Now, that was a really thorough walkthrough of the Braun and Clarke model, which is, as you said, undoubtedly the gold standard for many researchers conducting TA. But while that recursive, iterative model is dominant, it's probably beneficial for you, the doctoral students in the business school at the University of Ghana, to know there are other helpful ways to conceptualize this analytical journey. One particularly illuminating metaphor I believe mentioned in the guide is the staircase model, proposed originally by Auerbach and Silverstein and highlighted more recently by Rieger and Sigurfinnsdottir. It offers a slightly different way to visualize the progression from data to insight.
Indeed. And sometimes having a different mental model can really click for people. This staircase model offers a clear, perhaps more linear feeling progression towards higher levels of abstraction, which can be very illuminating for understanding precisely how raw data gets transformed into theoretical insight. It's quite literally like moving up a staircase one step at a time, with each step representing an increasing level of interpretation and conceptualization away from the raw text.
Okay, let's walk up the staircase. What's the ground floor?
Step 1. Raw text. This is the ground floor, the starting point. It's your complete, unanalyzed data set of transcripts. It's the untransformed reality of your collected data, exactly as it was recorded and transcribed, with all the ums, ahs, hesitations, and maybe transcription notes. In the case of Maria, it's her full, unedited interview transcript.
Okay, the starting point. Step 2.
Step 2. Relevant text. You take the first step up. Here, you make your initial analytical move by identifying and extracting segments of the text that are directly relevant to your research question. This is quite analogous to the familiarization phase and the very first pass of initial coding in the Braun and Clarke model. You begin highlighting, maybe copying and pasting, making preliminary analytical notes, essentially pulling out anything that speaks directly to the phenomenon you're studying. You're beginning to separate the relevant signal from the surrounding noise.
So pulling out the key quotes related to the question, let's apply this to Maria again.
Illustration. Maria. Right. Revisiting Maria's transcript through this lens, step 2 would involve highlighting or listing specific phrases that directly address her experience of transitioning to remote work. For example, "It's been a real roller coaster. I got 2 hours of my day back from commuting. The boundaries just evaporated. I'd find myself answering emails at 9 p.m. The team connection also suffered. You lose all that spontaneous collaboration. I feel more isolated, definitely, and at home, you worry you're just a name on a screen, that your contributions might be overlooked when it comes to promotions." These are all pieces of relevant text identified in Step 2.
Okay, got the relevant pieces with Step 3.
Step 3, repeating ideas. The next step up the staircase involves grouping these relevant text segments into repeating ideas. These are essentially clusters of text, groups of quotes that express a similar concept or convey a similar specific meaning. This step corresponds quite directly to the process of initial coding in the Braun and Clarke model, identifying those individual bricks or tiles we talked about. You're beginning to categorize and cluster your relevant data based on observable patterns of similarity in meaning.
So grouping the relevant quotes by specific idea, how would Maria's quotes group?
Illustration.
Maria.
Taking Maria's relevant text segments, you'd start to group them. For instance, the boundaries just evaporated and I'd find myself answering emails at 9 p.m. clearly point to the same issue. So they would form, let's call it repeating idea A, loss of work-life separation. Phrases like the team connection also suffered is not the same as just turning to your colleague and you lose all that spontaneous collaboration could be grouped under repeating idea B, impersonal communication style. Then quotes like, you're just a name on a screen, and your contributions might be overlooked, clearly signify repeating idea C, career insecurity, visibility concerns. And to complete the picture, I got 2 hours of my day back and I could throw in a load of laundry, would form repeating idea D, initial practical benefits. These are your repeating ideas akin to codes.
Okay, cluster the specific ideas. Next step up.
Step 4, themes. Here, you ascend to a higher level of abstraction on the staircase. You take your repeating ideas, which are essentially your codes or code clusters, and group them into broader, more interpretive themes. This mirrors the searching for themes and reviewing themes phases from the Braun and Clarke model, phases 3 and 4, where you move towards more analytical constructs that encompass multiple repeating ideas or codes. This is where you start to see the bigger picture, the main stories, emerging from the detailed patterns you identified in Step 3.
Okay, grouping the repeating ideas into bigger themes. How does that look for Maria?
Illustration, Maria. Applying this to Maria's repeating ideas. Repeating idea A, loss of work-life separation, and repeating idea D, initial practical benefits, seem contradictory, right? But together, they can be combined into a broader, inherently paradoxical theme, perhaps named the flexibility paradox.
Ah, capturing the tension again.
Exactly. The repeating idea B, impersonal communication style, can be developed into a theme that explains the consequence of this shift, maybe called the erosion of collaborative culture. And repeating idea C, career insecurity visibility concerns, which is already quite focused, can be elevated into a more resonant theme named visibility and value in a virtual world. You see how these themes are more abstract and interpretive than the repeating ideas. They combine multiple observations into a single analytical concept.
Yes, definitely a higher level of abstraction. So what's the final step, the top of the staircase?
Step 5, theoretical constructs. At the very top of the staircase, this is where you organize your developed themes into a coherent theoretical narrative or argument. This is where you connect your findings explicitly to broader theory in your field, building a compelling explanation of the phenomenon under study, and ultimately producing the final report or thesis chapter. It's about moving from your empirical findings, the themes grounded in data, to a comprehensive theoretical contribution that speaks to existing literature and potentially offers new theoretical insights or models. This is the ultimate goal for doctoral research, making a meaningful contribution to knowledge.
Okay, building the final argument, how would Maria's story culminate here?
Illustration, Maria. For Maria's data, the theoretical narrative developed at Step 5 might explain that the transition to remote work for mid-career professionals like her is not merely a simple logistical shift, but represents a fundamental restructuring of their professional reality. This restructuring, the argument goes, is characterized by the flexibility paradox, where initial personal gains are often ultimately concerned by blurred work-life boundaries. This condition then contributes to the erosion of collaborative culture, as informal relationship-building interactions are replaced by formal transactional ones. And this, in turn, fuels a crisis of professional identity, prompting new anxieties about maintaining visibility and value in a virtual world. Together, these constructs suggest a theory that remote work challenges the very foundations of how professional value, collaboration, and work-life balance are traditionally understood, enacted, and maintained in organizations. This final narrative represents the highest level of abstraction, offering a powerful, potentially theory-building explanation grounded firmly in the empirical data from Maria and others like her.
Wow. This staircase model truly offers a wonderful, very clear, hierarchical way to visualize that journey from raw, unadulterated data right up to a sophisticated, well-articulated theoretical argument. It complements the more detailed, iterative process of the six-phase approach beautifully, giving you another valuable mental model for handling complex qualitative data with clarity and structure. I can absolutely see how visualizing it like this could really help researchers, particularly you, the doctoral students at the University of Ghana Business School, keep track of exactly where you are in the analytical process and what the next level of abstraction needs to be.
Precisely. Different models resonate with different people, and having both options in your toolkit is beneficial.
Okay, so your analysis, regardless of which model you conceptually lean towards, ultimately culminates in a report, your findings chapter, maybe a journal article. And let's be crystal clear about this. This isn't just a simple listing of your themes or a basic summary of what people said. Your findings chapter or section absolutely must be an analytical narrative that makes a clear, coherent, and strongly evidence-based argument. It's storytelling with data, but it's rigorous academic storytelling. So what are the key ingredients for crafting a truly compelling thematic analysis report?
You've nailed it again. It's about crafting that persuasive narrative, not just listing points like a shopping list. To write a truly compelling and rigorous report, one that convinces your reader of the validity and significance of your findings, you should ideally structure the presentation of each theme with these essential elements.
Okay, give us the structure.
1. Introduce the theme. Begin each theme's section by clearly explaining the central concept of the theme in your own analytical words. Give the reader an immediate, concise understanding of what this theme is about, its core meaning, and its significance to your overall research question. This really sets the stage and prepares the reader for the detailed evidence and interpretation that will follow. Think of it as providing a clear topic sentence for your analytical paragraph or section.
Okay, clear introduction first.
2. Provide the analytic narrative. This is where you elaborate on the theme. You need to describe its nuances, its variations, perhaps its complexities as seen in the data. This is the heart of your interpretation. Here you need to connect the dots between the different codes or repeating ideas that form this theme, explaining why this theme is important, what it reveals about your research question, and how it contributes to your overall argument. This isn't just describing what the data says, it's explaining the underlying meaning, the patterns, and the significance. You're building your case, laying out your interpretation supported by logical reasoning and connection to the data.
So unpack the theme and explain its meaning.
Exactly. 3. Support with evidence, data extracts. This is absolutely crucial for establishing credibility and demonstrating that your interpretations are firmly grounded in the data, not just your opinion. You must use direct, well-chosen quotes or data extracts from your participants to illustrate and support your analytical points. These data extracts are your empirical evidence, your proof points, and this is key, they should never stand alone. Don't just drop a quote and move on.
Right, you have to explain the quote.
You always have to analyze them. Explain to the reader what is significant about the quote you've chosen, precisely how it supports your interpretation, and how it exemplifies the theme you're discussing. Don't assume the reader will automatically draw the same conclusion as you just from reading the quote. You need to walk them through your reasoning, explicitly linking the quote back to your analytical point.
Analyze the evidence, don't just present it. Got it.
4. Link to other themes and the overall argument. Finally, conclude the section on each theme by briefly showing how this specific theme connects to your broader research question. Also, consider showing how it interacts with or relates to the other themes you've developed in your analysis. Do they reinforce each other? Do they perhaps represent different facets of the same underlying phenomenon? Are there maybe interesting tensions or contradictions between different themes? This helps build a cohesive, integrated narrative for your entire findings chapter, showing the interconnectedness of your insights rather than just presenting them as isolated findings. It strengthens the overall story.
That structure sounds really robust. Could you maybe walk us through that Maria example again, applying this reporting structure to one of her themes?
Absolutely. Let's take theme 3. Anxieties of invisibility, the fear of being forgotten. Here's how you might structure the report section for it. 1. Introduce the theme. You might start with something like, beyond the challenges of communication and work-life balance, a significant and often distressing challenge reported by participants, and particularly salient in Maria's narrative, was the emergence of profound career-related anxiety rooted in their newfound physical invisibility within the remote work environment. That introduces the core concept.
Okay, clear intro.
2. Provide the analytic narrative. Then you elaborate. While physical presence in the office was once perhaps a passive, taken-for-granted indicator of commitment, engagement, and performance, the shift to remote work appeared to create an unsettling vacuum for some. Participants like Maria worried that without being physically seen, their efforts, contributions, and even their very presence within the organization were no longer being adequately recognized or valued by management. This fear was not just about acknowledgement for current projects, but often extended worryingly to future career prospects, mentorship opportunities, and access to developmental assignments within the organization. This explains the nuances and significance.
Okay, unpacking the meaning.
3. Support with evidence, data extracts, and analyze. Now, the crucial evidence and analysis. As Maria, a 45-year-old accountant with aspirations for partnership, poignantly explained, the lack of visibility created a persistent, almost gnawing fear of being professionally overlooked. In the office, your hard work is seen. There's that subtle nod from the partner, that quick chat in the hallway, that informal recognition that keeps you motivated. At home, you worry you're just a name on a screen. You worry that your contributions might be overlooked when it comes to promotions or even just getting put on the interesting high-profile assignments. It's a constant low-level anxiety that kind of gnaws at you, making you feel, less valuable sometimes. Maria's statement powerfully encapsulates this anxiety of invisibility, a feeling that one's professional identity and perceived intrinsic worth are somehow diminished without the consistent reinforcement provided by physical presence and informal workplace interactions. Here, you present the quote and explicitly analyze what it shows.
Perfect. Quote plus analysis.
4. Link to other themes and the overall argument. Finally, you connect it. This suggests that for many mid-career professionals, the transition to remote work is not merely a logistical shift, but potentially a fundamental challenge to how career progression, professional worth, and value are traditionally perceived, signaled, and measured within organizations. This anxiety about invisibility connects directly to the broader theme of the transactional workplace, as the reduction in informal human connection also seems to reduce opportunities for the informal recognition and relationship building crucial for career advancement. This links the theme back to the bigger picture and other findings. The structured approach ensures your report is robust, analytical, compelling, and makes your argument clear and well supported by the data.
That structural guidance is incredibly helpful. It really outlines exactly how to build that convincing analytical narrative for each theme. Now, shifting gears slightly, but still on the topic of rigor. In qualitative research, we know we approach concepts like validity and reliability quite differently than in quantitative studies, right? Thematic analysis, as you've stressed, is inherently an interpretive act. It doesn't seek a single objective truth in the way a positivist study might aim for. So how do we ensure the trustworthiness and credibility of our interpretations? Especially for you, the doctoral students from the University of Ghana Business School, undertaking Advanced Qualitative Research Methods, this is absolutely paramount for your thesis, where the rigor of your work will be constantly scrutinized by examiners.
You're absolutely right. The terminology often shifts to better reflect our epistemological stance in qualitative research, but the underlying commitment to rigor, transparency, and the defensibility of our findings remains absolute. We just use different language and different strategies to achieve it. The seminal work of Lincoln and Guba back in 1985 provides a widely accepted and highly practical framework for establishing what they call trustworthiness in qualitative research. Their framework comprises 4 key criteria that directly parallel their quantitative counterparts, but are achieved through distinct qualitative strategies better suited to interpretive work.
Okay, the Lincoln and Guba criteria, what are they?
The 4 criteria are credibility, transferability, dependability, and confirmability. Let's take each one. 1. Credibility, which parallels internal validity in quantitative terms. This answers the fundamental question: how believable and authentic are the findings? It's about ensuring that your interpretation is a fitting and accurate representation of the participants' intended meanings, that you haven't somehow misrepresented their experiences or perspectives, and that your conclusions genuinely resonate with the lived reality you're exploring. Are your findings credible to those who share their experiences?
Okay, believability. How do you achieve that?
Several strategies enhance credibility. Prolonged engagement. This means spending sufficient extended time immersed in the research context with the data, and where appropriate, with your participants to gain a deep and nuanced understanding. This helps prevent superficial interpretations that might arise from just a quick, shallow dive. It allows you to build rapport, if interacting with participants, overcome potential initial deceptions or guardedness, and test out your emerging hunches as you become more familiar with the setting and the people. Peer debriefing. This involves regularly discussing your analytical process, your emerging codes, your potential themes, and your interpretations with knowledgeable colleagues, your supervisor, or other qualitative researchers who are not directly involved in your specific study. These peers can act as a critical sounding board. They can challenge your assumptions, ask probing questions, offer alternative interpretations you might not have considered, and point out potential blind spots or biases, helping you refine and strengthen your analysis. It's like having an external check on your interpretive process. Triangulation.
This is about using multiple sources or methods to corroborate or converge on your findings, like different lines of sight confirming a location on a map. This could mean using multiple data sources, example, combining interviews with focus groups, or using observational data alongside document analysis. It could involve having multiple researchers independently analyze the data, though, as we'll discuss, the goal isn't necessarily identical coding. Or it could even mean applying different theoretical perspectives to the same data to see if they yield converging insights. When multiple different sources or methods point towards the same conclusion, your findings become much more credible and robust. Member checking, sometimes called respondent validation. This is a powerful, though sometimes complex, strategy. It involves taking your preliminary findings, your interpretations, maybe even draft themes, back to the participants themselves and asking them if your interpretations resonate with their experience. Do they feel you've captured their reality accurately?
Well, it can be complex to implement effectively. CAG, participants might filter their responses. They might struggle with academic language, or they might even change their minds upon reflection. It's a direct and potent way to enhance the believability and authenticity of your findings by validating them directly with those who live the experience.
Okay, those all make sense for boosting credibility. What's the next criterion?
2. Transferability, which parallels external validity or generalizability. This addresses the question, to what extent can the findings of this particular study be applied or considered relevant to other contexts or groups? Now, unlike quantitative research, which often aims for statistical generalizability based on representative sampling, TA doesn't typically aim for that kind of broad generalization. You usually can't claim your findings apply universally to an entire population based on a small qualitative sample. Instead, the goal is for its insights to potentially be relevant or transferable elsewhere under similar conditions.
So not generalizing, but allowing others to see if it fits their context. How?
The primary strategy here is thick description. This term, popularized by Clifford Geertz, means you must provide a rich, incredibly detailed, dense description of your research context, your participants, while maintaining anonymity, the specific methods you use for data collection and analysis, and the phenomenon under study itself. This comprehensive contextual detail empowers the reader, maybe another researcher, a practitioner in the field, a policymaker, to make an informed judgment about whether your findings might be transferable or relevant to a setting they are familiar with. Your job as the researcher isn't to claim generalizability, but to provide enough rich contextual detail for others to assess its possibility for themselves. You enable transferability judgments by others through your detailed reporting.
Provide the details so others can judge relevance. Got it. Next.
3. Dependability, which parallels reliability. This asks, are the findings consistent, and could the research process be followed or audited by others? It's about demonstrating that your research process is logical, systematic, well-documented, and traceable, allowing an external reviewer or auditor to follow your analytical journey from the raw data right through to your final themes and conclusions. It ensures that if another researcher were to follow your described steps, they would likely arrive at similar findings or conclusions, acknowledging the interpretive nature of qualitative work, so not necessarily identical, but congruent.
So showing your work clearly, how is that achieved?
The key strategy is maintaining a rigorous audit trail. This means keeping meticulous, detailed records of your entire research process from start to finish. This includes documenting your initial research questions, all your methodological choices and the rationale behind them, why NTA, why inducted, etc., your data collection notes or protocols, all your raw data, like transcripts, detailed coding notes, including code definitions and how they evolved, early thematic maps or conceptual diagrams you developed, and most importantly, detailed notes or memos documenting how and why codes were developed, clustered into themes, and how those themes were refined, changed, or discarded over time based on your analysis. This comprehensive trail allows an external reviewer like your thesis examiner to follow and understand your decision-making process at every single step, demonstrating the logic, coherence, and consistency of your analysis.
Okay, a detailed logbook of the whole process. And the final criterion.
4. Confirmability, which parallels objectivity, though we avoid that term in qualitative research. This addresses the critical question: to what degree are the findings a product of the participants' meanings and experiences, rather than solely the researcher's biases, motivations, or perspectives? It's about demonstrating that your interpretation is truly grounded in the data itself, and not just a projection of your own assumptions, theoretical leanings, or personal experiences. It's about showing convincingly that your conclusions are derived from the data, not imposed upon it by you.
Ensuring the findings reflect the data, not just the researcher.
Two key strategies contribute significantly to confirmability. Reflexivity. This is perhaps the most crucial ongoing practice in all qualitative research. As the researcher, you are the primary instrument of analysis, so you must engage in critical self-reflection about your own role and influence throughout the research process. This often involves keeping a reflexive journal or detailed memos where you document your own assumptions, preconceptions, theoretical commitments, personal biases, values, and even your emotional responses to the data or participants. Being transparent about your positionality, your background, experiences, and perspectives, and actively considering how it might be shaping your analysis is key to demonstrating confirmability. You acknowledge your lens rather than pretending it doesn't exist, which paradoxically strengthens the trustworthiness of your argument. Audit trail. The same comprehensive audit trail used for demonstrating dependability also serves confirmability. By clearly showing how your final themes and interpretations are linked back directly to specific segments of the raw data, using those illustrative quotes we discussed, you provide tangible, empirical evidence that your findings are genuinely grounded in what participants said and experienced, rather than being arbitrary constructions or reflecting only your own viewpoint. The trail connects interpretation back to source data.
That's an incredibly comprehensive framework for trustworthiness. It sounds like a lot of careful work, especially the audit trail and reflexivity, but absolutely essential for doctoral level research. Now, one specific question that often comes up, especially for people familiar with quantitative methods, what about intercoder reliability? Where multiple researchers code the same data independently. We often hear about statistical measures like Cohen's kappa being used in quantitative content analysis to show agreement. How does that translate, if at all, to the interpretive nature of thematic analysis, where it feels less about strict objectivity and more about uncovering nuanced meaning?
That's a really important distinction to make, and it highlights a common misunderstanding that can sometimes lead qualitative researchers, particularly those coming from quantitative backgrounds, down the wrong path with TA. Unlike quantitative content analysis, which often does seek to ensure that different coders apply a predefined codebook objectively and consistently, hence using statistical measures like Cohen's kappa to quantify the level of agreement. Thematic analysis, as we've discussed, fundamentally views coding as an inherently interpretive act. The researchers interpreting meaning, not just counting manifest content.
So the goal isn't necessarily identical coding.
Exactly. Therefore, the primary goal of having multiple researchers involved in a TA project isn't necessarily to achieve a high statistical agreement score on every single code applied. In fact, striving for perfect, statistically measured agreement can sometimes stifle deeper analysis, potentially forcing disparate or nuanced ideas into overly simplistic boxes just to achieve consensus, or overlooking subtle interpretations.
So what is the value of multiple researchers in TA then?
Instead, when multiple researchers are involved in TA, the value lies in enriching the analysis through the incorporation of diverse perspectives. Different researchers, bringing their unique insights, theoretical sensitivities, experiences, and understandings to the data, can lead to deeper, more nuanced, and more robust interpretations. When discrepancies in coding or thematic identification inevitably occur, and they are typically resolved through intensive discussion and the building of consensus among the research team.
So the disagreement itself is useful.
Absolutely. These discrepancies are not seen primarily as problems to be eliminated or sources of error. Rather, they are viewed as valuable opportunities to refine the meaning and boundaries of codes and themes, to explore alternative interpretations that one researcher might have missed, to challenge assumptions, and to ultimately strengthen the overall analytical rigor and depth. For example, if two researchers initially code the same segment of text differently, instead of just trying to force one to agree with the other to boost a kappa score, they would discuss why they saw it differently. What underlying meaning did each perceive? This discussion can lead to a much more precise and nuanced definition of the code, or perhaps even the realization that a new, more subtle code or theme is needed to capture the complexity fully. It's about intellectual debate and dialogue, leading to richer understanding, not just a numerical matching exercise. The process enhances quality through collaboration.
That makes so much more sense for an interpretive method like TA. Focus on the dialogue and deeper understanding, not just the statistics of agreement. Okay. Now, even with the best intentions and following these rigorous methods we've discussed, it's probably still easy to stumble, especially when navigating the complexities and sheer volume of qualitative data, as you just highlighted with the intercoder discussion example. For you, the doctoral students at the University of Ghana Business School, undertaking advanced qualitative research methods, understanding these common pitfalls can save you a tremendous amount of headache, time, and potential rework, and ultimately strengthen the quality and defensibility of your thesis. What are the most frequent traps you see researchers fall into when doing thematic analysis?
Absolutely. Awareness of these frequent traps is your first and perhaps best line of defense against methodological missteps in thematic analysis. Knowing what not to do is almost as important as knowing what to do. Here are some of the most common ones to watch out for.
Okay, let's hear them.
1. Just summarizing, not analyzing. This is, without a doubt, perhaps the most common and critical pitfall, and it comes right back to our earlier discussion about answering the so what question. Students, and sometimes even seasoned researchers, simply describe what the data says. They provide a factual summary of participant responses, maybe grouping similar quotes together, but without offering any deeper interpretation or explanation of the meaning and significance of those responses.
Like we discussed with the theme definitions.
Exactly. For example, a student might present a theme called Participants Like the New Training Program, and then just provide a series of quotes where people say nice things about it. That's description, a summary. Your themes must be analytical concepts that synthesize and interpret the data, telling a story about why they liked it or what aspects they valued or what that liking represents in the broader context or what it implies for future training design. You absolutely need to move beyond saying what happened to explaining why it matters and what it signifies in relation to your specific research question.
Avoid the description trap. Got it. Pitfall number 2.
2. Using interview questions as themes. This is another frequent error, and it can be a very subtle trap to fall into, especially if your analysis feels overwhelming. It's the mistake of simply taking your interview guide questions and turning them directly into your themes. For example, if you ask participants, what are the main challenges you face in implementing this policy? A weak or non-analytical theme would simply be challenges of policy implementation.
Just mirroring the question.
Precisely. While that's obviously a topic you explored, it's not an analytical theme that has emerged from the patterns within the data. Your themes must emerge from the patterned responses across your entire data set, often combining insights from various parts of the interviews or different data sources. And they should not be predetermined or simply dictated by the exact wording of the questions you ask during data collection. The themes should reflect the analytical patterns within the participants' responses to those questions, maybe something more specific and interpretive like navigating bureaucratic hurdles in policy rollout or the struggle for frontline buy-in during implementation, which are much more interpretive insights derived from the data about the challenges.
Okay, themes from data patterns, not interview questions. Next.
3. Lack of coherence. Your themes are weak if they're not internally consistent, or if the boundaries between your different themes are blurry and overlap excessively without clear distinction. Each theme should tell a distinct, coherent story, and all the data extracts collated under it should clearly contribute to that specific story. If you find yourself including quotes under a theme that don't quite fit or seem tangential, it weakens the theme's integrity. Similarly, if the distinctions between your themes are unclear, if they seem to blend into each other, or if some data segments seem to fit equally well into multiple themes without a clear analytical justification for why, it indicates a lack of analytical precision and refinement. Each theme needs to have a clear, distinct essence that justifies its existence as a separate analytical construct in your overall narrative.
Keep the themes distinct and internally consistent. Makes sense.
4. Mismatch between data and claims. This pitfall occurs when the analytical claims or interpretations you make in your report are not strongly and sufficiently supported by the empirical evidence presented from your data. You simply cannot overstate your case or draw grand conclusions that aren't clearly and demonstrably grounded in your empirical material. For instance, claiming a theme reflects a universal experience among your participants when your data only shows strong evidence for it in a few instances, or making a significant interpretive leap that isn't clearly backed up by specific, illustrative participant quotes. Every analytical statement you make, every interpretation you offer, must be traceable back to specific, well-chosen data extracts that support it. The strength and credibility of your entire argument depend entirely on the solid foundation of your evidence. Don't let your claims run ahead of your data.
Ground your claims firmly in the data. Crucial. And the last common pitfall.
5. Not being explicit about your method. Transparency, as we've said, is absolutely key to rigor in qualitative research. A significant pitfall, especially for doctoral students writing up their methodology chapter, is failing to clearly and comprehensively describe your specific thematic analysis approach. You must articulate your methodological choices clearly. Was your approach primarily inductive or deductive, or a mix? Did you analyze primarily at a semantic or a latent level, or both? What were the specific phases or steps of your analysis? Example, explicitly referencing Braun and Clarke's 6 phases if you use them, or the staircase model, or perhaps detailing your own adapted process. And critically, you should justify why you made these choices in relation to your research question and context. This transparency allows readers and reviewers, including your thesis examiners, to understand and assess the trustworthiness and rigor of your study, and it makes your findings defensible. Don't leave your reader guessing about how you actually did the analysis.
Those pitfalls are invaluable warnings. Being aware of them is half the battle. Now, related to justifying your choices, it's also vital for you, the doctoral students in the business school of the University of Ghana, to understand where thematic analysis fits within the broader landscape of qualitative research methods. How does it stand apart from other well-known qualitative approaches, especially those that might seem superficially similar in that they also involve finding patterns in text? Having this clarity will really help you justify your specific methodological choice in your thesis and ensure you're using the right analytical tool for your specific research question and philosophical stance.
That's a critical point for methodological justification. While there can indeed be some conceptual overlaps, and certain analytical techniques like coding might be shared across different approaches, these methods often have distinct underlying philosophies, specific aims, and varying levels of theoretical commitment that set them apart. Let's briefly compare TA to a few common ones.
Okay, TA versus
grounded theory, GT. As we touched upon earlier, thematic analysis is primarily a flexible, standalone method for identifying, analyzing, and reporting patterns or themes across a dataset. It can be used descriptively or interpretively. Grounded theory, however, is a much broader, more comprehensive methodology with a very specific, explicit aim: to generate a substantive theory that is grounded specifically and systematically in the data. GT involves more rigid and systematic processes than TA typically does, such as theoretical sampling, where data collection decisions are actively guided by the emerging theory, not fully pre-planned, and the technique of constant comparison, continuously comparing data with codes, codes with categories, categories with the emerging theory, in order to achieve theoretical saturation. While TA can certainly contribute to theory development, GT aims to build theory as its core explicit outcome, and thus involves a much more intensive, iterative, and prescribed process of theory generation from the ground up.
So GT is about building theory, TA is more about finding patterns.
Generally speaking, yes, that's a key distinction in aim. Next, versus discourse analysis, DA. Thematic analysis typically focuses on the content and meaning of what is said or written, and what are people talking about, what experiences are they describing, and what does it signify? It generally asks. What themes are present in this text regarding the topic? Discourse analysis, on the other hand, focuses explicitly on the use of language itself, how language and discourse actively construct knowledge, shape power dynamics, enact social realities, and constitute identities. DA examines not just what is said, but how it is said, the linguistic strategies, rhetorical devices, etc., and what social or political function that specific use of language serves in a particular context. It's often less concerned with the meaning behind the words in a psychological sense, and more focused on the performative nature of language, how language does things in the world, how it shapes reality, rather than simply reflecting it.
So DA focuses on language use and construction, TA on content and meaning.
A good summary. Finally, versus interpretive phenomenological analysis, IPA. Thematic analysis often looks for common, shared themes across a dataset, which can be drawn from a potentially diverse group of participants and frequently involves a somewhat larger sample size than IPA. Interpretive phenomenological analysis, IPA, by contrast, has a much narrower and deeper focus. It concentrates in depth on the detailed, lived, subjective experience of a small, intentionally homogeneous group of individuals. Its primary goal is to explore how these specific individuals make sense of a particular significant life experience, like living with a chronic illness or undergoing a major career change. IPA is deeply ideographic, focused on the particular and psychological, seeking profound insights into the unique sense-making processes of just a few individuals, aiming for depth over breadth. While TA can be applied to larger data sets to find more general patterns of meaning across a group, IPA deliberately uses small samples to achieve very rich, detailed accounts of individual lived experience.
That really clarifies the distinctions. The focus, the aim, the sample size, the philosophical underpinnings, they all differ significantly. And knowing that is so important for choosing and justifying your method. Okay, to help you keep track of your progress through the TA process itself and ensure you've covered all your bases methodologically, the guide we're drawing from includes a really handy checklist adapted directly from Braun and Clarke's work. It's a practical, actionable tool for you, the doctoral students from the University of Ghana Business School, as you meticulously conduct your advanced qualitative research methods. I found looking at this incredibly helpful as a tangible way to ensure you're being systematic and haven't missed a crucial step.
It's simple, yes, but it's an incredibly effective way to ensure systematic practice and methodological rigor throughout your thematic analysis. It acts like a pilot's pre-flight checklist, helping you self-assess your progress and ensure no crucial step is inadvertently missed, especially when you're deep in the complexities of your data. It breaks down the entire process by the 6 phases.
Okay, run us through the checklist highlights.
Sure. Under Phase 1, familiarization, it prompts you. Did you transcribe the data accurately, if applicable? Critically, did you read and reread it thoroughly multiple times to really absorb its nuances? Did you note down your initial ideas and impressions, beginning that analytical dialogue with your data?
Check 1.
For Phase 2, coding, it asks. Did you code the entire dataset exhaustively, ensuring every potentially relevant segment was tagged? Have you collated all the relevant data extracts for each code you created, keeping your codes organized and easily accessible for the next phase?
Check 2.
Moving to Phase 3. Searching for themes, the checklist verifies. Did you actively sort your codes into potential themes, grouping related concepts, and starting to see the bigger picture emerge? Have you gathered together all the relevant data extracts for each potential theme so you can review them cohesively in the next phase?
Check 3.
In the crucial Phase 4, reviewing potential themes, it reminds you, did you review your potential themes first against the coded extracts collated under them? Level 1, to ensure internal coherence and that the data genuinely supports the theme. Then, crucially, did you step back and review your themes against the entire data set? Level 2, to ensure overall fit, comprehensiveness, and that your map accurately captures the essence of your entire data set. Did you create and refine a thematic map to visualize these relationships and your overall analytical structure?
Check 4, with its 2-level.
For Phase 5, defining and naming themes, it checks. Did you conduct an in-depth analytical review and write-up of each final theme, truly capturing its essence and explaining how it contributes to answering your research question? Have you created clear, concise definitions and suitably evocative names for each theme, making them impactful and comprehensible?
Check 5.
And finally, for Phase 6, producing the report, it asks, did you select vivid, compelling data extracts that powerfully illustrate your analytical points? And did you analyze them? Have you written the final analytical narrative telling a coherent, convincing, evidence-based story? Did you clearly relate your analysis back to your original research question and the existing literature, explicitly showing how your themes provide answers or insights? And ultimately, have you produced a scholarly report or chapter that stands as a rigorous, defensible, and impactful piece of research?
Check 6. This checklist really does highlight that thematic analysis, far from being some loose or purely intuitive process, is actually a systematic, iterative, and deeply reflective endeavor when done properly. It's all about building a robust, credible argument directly from your data, step by calculated step, and ensuring that your findings are truly trustworthy and make a contribution.
Absolutely. It demystifies the process and emphasizes the rigor involved.
What a fantastic journey we've taken today, diving deep into A Doctoral Student's Guide to Thematic Analysis by Professor Richard Boateng and Dr. Jonathan Barnor. We've really unpacked what a theme truly is, emphasizing it's far more than a mere topic, but a patterned analytical insight that gets to the so what of your data.
Yes, that analytical component is key.
We explored when TA is the right choice, delving into its flexibility for things like exploratory research and understanding lived experiences. We navigated those crucial distinctions between different approaches, inductive versus deductive, semantic versus latent, and even the deeper essentialist versus constructionist stances, emphasizing how your choices profoundly shape your interpretation.
And the importance of being explicit about those choices.
Absolutely. We stressed the non-negotiable importance of meticulous data preparation through high-quality transcription and deep immersive familiarization. We clarified the building blocks, how codes act like bricks that build up into the meaningful structures of themes, themes, moving from raw words to powerful concepts.
That hierarchy is fundamental.
And we systematically walked through the intricate yet clear steps of the widely used Braun and Clarke six-phase approach, brought to life by that relatable Maria illustration. And then we viewed the analytical journey through that elegant alternative metaphor, the staircase model.
Offering different ways to conceptualize the process.
Exactly. And crucially, we've armed you with essential strategies for ensuring quality and rigor using the trustworthiness criteria, practical advice for effectively reporting your findings as a narrative, and highlighted those common pitfalls to proactively avoid that can so easily derail a study.
Thematic analysis, when you get right down to it, is at its core an accessible, remarkably flexible, yet potentially profoundly rigorous method for making sense of the inherent complexities of human experience captured in qualitative data. And for you, the doctoral students at the University of Ghana Business School undertaking Advanced Qualitative Research Methods, mastering TA is about so much more than just identifying patterns in your data. It's fundamentally about recognizing that the researcher that's you is not some passive conduit through which themes simply emerge, as if by magic, fully formed from the data itself. Instead, you are an active interpreter, an analytical craftsperson, who actively constructs meaning through a recursive, iterative, and deeply reflective process of engagement with the data. Your transparency in documenting your methodological choices, from deciding between inductive versus deductive to choosing semantic versus latent levels of analysis, is absolutely paramount for establishing the credibility and trustworthiness of your findings in the eyes of your examiners and the broader academic community you wish to engage with.
That's a powerful reminder, the researcher as an active interpreter, not a passive observer. And ultimately, the goal of a thematic analysis isn't really to produce a list of codes or a neat map of themes, is it?
Not at all. The ultimate goal is to tell a compelling, persuasive, evidence-based story. A story that illuminates your research question in a new way, offers significant insights into the phenomenon under study, and makes a meaningful, original contribution to the scholarly conversation in your specific field. While the process, let's be honest, can be challenging, it requires patience, analytical creativity, and systematic data position mastering. Thematic analysis is an essential and deeply rewarding endeavor. It provides a solid, versatile foundation not just for your doctorate, but potentially for a lifetime of insightful qualitative inquiry and even practical applications in business, policy, or other fields.
A truly foundational skill.
It is. So as you move forward with your own research, perhaps as you sit down with your own transcripts or field notes, consider this. How will you consciously embrace the interpretive act required for achieving true thematic insight? How will you push yourself beyond merely describing what your participants say to truly building a compelling, evidence-based story that contributes new, impactful knowledge to your field? How will you make your data sing?
How will you make your data sing? A profound and inspiring thought to leave you with. We sincerely hope this deep dive into thematic analysis has equipped you with valuable insights, practical strategies, and perhaps renewed confidence for your own research journey. Until next time on our deep dive, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep making sense of the rich, complex world around you.
Thank you very, very much. I think we are up to the time and a lot of things have gone up. Rachel, you had your hand up earlier, and
Yes, Prof.
the material. You had your hand up earlier, so let me just address a few questions and then we can go, because I know some people have another class too. Okay.
Yes, Prof. Thank you so much for this very insightful presentation. Very, very insightful. Actually, I've been looking for it today, so I was keenly